So in 1969, Earl Brown wrote this piece for orchestra called Module 3, and I'm going to have a listen to it today. I have this really crude scan of it with the performance notes at the end here. And we looked at another piece by Earl Brown just a few days ago called Cross Sections and Color Fields. Which was another orchestra piece. It kind of had a setup like this, except a little bit more refined. The idea is, if you have the different families of the orchestra spatialized in some sort of way, it's easier for the conductor to cue them as groups, right? So you can cue directly in front of you, you can cue like at the back or the right or the left. And as you can imagine, it's like somewhat oriented like a traditional orchestra. Just, maybe more angled, you have to angle the winds and the brass. And there's really no intermingling of percussion with winds or brass. It's like right at the back. This piece has to be performed simultaneously with Module 1 or Module 2. And it's intended to be performed with multiple conductors. So say you're performing Module 3 with Module 2, then you have two conductors, one for each. So Module 1 was written in 1966. That's 3 years prior to Module 3. And it's also for orchestra. This was written for a Parisian orchestra, Orchestra Nationale of the ORTF Paris. The instrumentation for Module 1 is 2121, 2211 strings. Module 2 is another orchestra piece which was composed in the same year. Its instrumentation is 1212, 2220, and strings. And the one we're looking at today is 2121, 1210, 3 percussion, harp, piano, and strings. So this is the only one with any percussionists, or piano or harp. So unlike Modules 1 and 2, Module 3 is divided into 4 sections, like the 4 families of the orchestra, as we've seen here. And each of these families has their own numbers. So I think what I'm gathering is in Modules 1 and 2, the conductor can like cue 1, 4, 5, etc., but they're cueing the whole ensemble. Whereas Module 3, they can cue like 1 from the brass and 5 from the winds, or like 3 from the percussion and 2 from the winds, or whatever. So it's a little bit more flexible in its construction. We saw a little bit of this in the cross sections and color fields piece, but that had also through composed sections. It was a little bit more elaborate. It wasn't just a single idea. This, I think, is a bit more straightforward. Yeah, as I said before, it's like the precise chord is chosen by the conductor's fingers and cued by like gesturing towards the group. And then the conductor also decides when to cut off fermatas, for example. If we look at the score, you can kind of see that it gives the conductor flexibility to start and cut off chords. On the first page, for example, the string players have 2 chords per cue, which are labeled A and B. And then the winds and brass, no percussion on the first page, they get a single chord per cue. And then on the second page we get percussion stuff, which involves more specific cueing. And it's possible that, yeah, this is not, you wouldn't read one page and then the other. It's sort of all like one big thing, right? So when you're cueing the percussion at the back, you get all kinds of chords from them. Yeah, there's no like separate setup for the performance of module 1 or 2. You just distribute parts from these, one of or more of these pieces, to the ensemble. So that way you can have two conductors up at the front, which I'm assuming is what's intended. Yeah, so that's the idea. So you obviously have to let the performers know, like, hey, this is your conductor. If you have this part, watch for when they're cueing you. And so basically what you end up having is like 2 or 3 conductors holding up numbers and cueing sections of the ensemble. Only one of them is responsible for cueing individual families, and the other 1 or 2 conductors, they just cue the whole orchestra, whoever is reading those parts. So it's very flexible and very loose, and it seems to be structured around just the playing of these chords. I think what you're going to end up with, and I've never heard this piece before, so I'm not totally sure, but I think what you're going to end up with is a lot of like a layer of percussion, which is faster than everything else going on, which is more because the other ensemble members have more sustained tones. What I'm finding kind of interesting about this is it really engages multiple conductors as performers, and they can almost play off of each other and respond to what each other are doing, and that's not really something that's asked of conductors a lot, improvising with other conductors. So I'm curious to hear how it turns out, because who knows if conductors are good at doing that. It's not something that is usually asked of them. So modules 1 and 2 are actually supposed to be performed together. So you can't just perform module 1 or just perform module 2. It's either 1-2 or 3-1 or 3-2 or 1-2-3. I think seems to be the options here. And yeah, so I guess this sort of like idea of two conductors improvising with one another preceded the composition of module 3, which I guess sort of just complicates matters because it gives this freedom of interacting with different families within the ensemble. So on the Foundation website, you can hear a 9-minute performance of modules 1 and 2 together. And there's no such recording of module 3, but they do have this sort of like history of performances, with the oldest one being in 1981, which is long after it was composed. The performances of modules 1 and 2 go back a lot farther to 1967. I don't think I'm going to be able to find a performance of this, honestly, but we can listen to modules 1 and 2 out of curiosity, I guess. Hopefully this interests you enough. I think the only reason I have this score is I noticed it was free on Scribd. But yeah, it's very strange that there's no recordings up of it. You can see this sort of like slow introduction of ideas into his like style, right? You have this idea of cueing with numbers and of multiple conductors. That's like as old as 1966. Then there's this idea of cueing basically spatialized groups, which are extracted from the orchestra. It's a very crude way of doing it, but that's basically what he's doing. And then then in the other piece from 1971, cross sections and color fields, he does both and also does like through composed stuff, normal or stuff that's ordinarily conducted. Um, so, and then we looked at his string quartet as well, which had all kinds of other things which he wasn't able to do with a full ensemble like an orchestra. So, kind of interesting. Um, as always, the link to the recording, which will be this one, is in the description. It looks like you can even download it. And if this sort of thing interests you, this Earl Brown Foundation website is a fantastic resource and can probably tell you much more than I have time to share in a video. So, yeah, with that, let's have a listen to modules 1 and 2. Yeah, so I thought this was a really interesting piece. I like that the makeup of the two ensembles is slightly different. You get the contra from one group and English horn, and from the other group you get bass clarinet and tuba. And yeah, I think there's a surprising variety of different chords and sounds. I think for the most part in this performance there were always two chords going at the same time, except for maybe the beginning. And you can have like, I guess 25 different combinations, because there's 5 in one score and 5 in the other, unless there's more than one page per score, but maybe that's the case, I'm not sure. But I imagine like, even if these scores are only one page, that's a huge variety of different sounds that can come out of the ensemble. Just glancing at like the thumbnail here, it seems like not every ensemble member is used in every chord. It's not, and I think that sort of comes across in the way that it sounds. There's a lot of space and room given to different members of the ensemble, so that you're not just constantly being blasted all the time. And yeah, some of those harmonies were really lush, and some of the conductor's choices were really interesting to sometimes have shorter chords or really long ones, and I imagine they were also cueing swells of volume and things, which is really cool. I think compared to like the cross sections piece, this piece has many more performances, but they sort of end at 2016. So there hasn't been one in a long time. Module 3, as I said before, doesn't have a lot of performances at all, and it hasn't been performed since 2002. So that's kind of a shame. It was a different commission, obviously, by a festival in Yugoslavia. You can see, even though he's a New York composer of the New York school, he's more popular in Germany and Europe, and that's sort of where his career kind of peaked, I think, was teaching at Darmstadt. So, yeah. I like this piece better than the more elaborate piece we looked at from 1971. I just like how simple this idea is, and I think it's a fully contained idea. It's a whole world unto its own, and definitely worth 20 minutes of your time. And it just seems like a lot of fun to put on. So it would be a real pleasure to see some conductors do this with a group. But based on when these were last performed, I doubt that it's going to get a lot of other performances, unfortunately. This aleatoric stuff in this extreme form never really caught on with modern orchestras, and hopefully it doesn't fade into obscurity. But based on the pieces we've been looking at in this series, this is way more out there than any other piece we've looked at, and it's the oldest piece we've looked at so far. So I think that says something. Next session, we're going to look at De Natura Sonoris 1, which is another Penderecki, obviously. Just a few sessions ago, we looked at De Natura Sonoris 2, so we're going to see what differences there are when he was working on something 3 years prior with a full orchestra. And yeah, interesting that we're getting into the 1960s now, and the pieces are getting very diverse. They're all written around exactly the same time. So